Hope. We hear that word and we think of positivity or wishful thinking. But hope is something different. It's greater, it's better, and it's more. Hope is choosing to wait for God to bring His goodness into our lives. It's remembering His faithfulness in our past and trusting His plans for our future. Hope rises when we encounter the light that shatters the darkness and when the long-awaited Messiah makes His home with us. It's an invitation for every person, and it's here now because Jesus is here now. This is hope. Welcome to Christmas.
Please stand if you're able. Let's sing Yes, I Will. I count on one thing, the same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will let you hide in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh, yes, I will. I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will let you hide in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh, yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
Lord, I come bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my soul to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Well, today is officially like the beginning of the Christmas season. So, I mean, in church, I know like Halloween is the day in the stores, right? But no, for the church, today is the day, first day of the Christmas season. And this year we're going to be talking about peace. We thought our world could use a little peace. People are, oh, my phone's going off now. I usually silence that, but it's been one of those days where there's a lot going on. I don't know if you noticed or not. And now I can't remember how. Oh, there it is. I'm not scrolling down far. I'm like, I don't see it. I don't know where it went. Okay. Sorry. So peace. Yes, we need some peace. And, people, like half our country is probably happy and half our country is probably very unhappy. And so we need peace as a country. We need peace maybe in our families. I know people around the Thanksgiving table anymore, it sometimes can be a lot of conflict. People feel different ways about things. So we felt like we really needed some peace. So that's what we're going to talk about the whole season. And today we're talking about, making peace with our past. Because a lot of times our past can kind of be at war with us, and it can make us, the things we remember and things that affect us, those things can really give us a lot of distraction and disturb us in certain ways. So I'm thinking about like our past and thinking about what are the things that we remember. And I know that from my days in psychology and stuff that the things that really are etched into our brain are the memories that have some kind of a strong emotional connection to them. So it can be a good emotional connection, it can be a bad emotional connection, but if we have a strong emotion that lasts a while, the memories in that moment can be really, really vibrant and powerful and crystal clear to us. I think about like one of the stories, the pastor at the Nazarene Church, who is a friend of a lot of ours, Pastor Kevin, told about one day his driving with his dad in a truck, and his dad just kind of stopped and wanted to tell him that he was proud of him. And you could tell from the way that he told that story that it was a memory that was just really etched into his brain, that had an emotional component to it, that where because it meant so much to him in an emotional way, that my memory, he could probably tell you exactly what his dad was wearing. He could probably tell you exactly what spot in the road they were on in that moment, what was going on outside, maybe how it smelled, those things I'm sure were etched into his mind. And sometimes we can remember things like that. And sometimes some things we just forget because they're not important, right? And like I was thinking, I don't know how my brain works sometimes. It's weird. But I can't tell you why I was thinking about it, but I was thinking about like places where I grew up after I left home, where I was doing laundry. And, I can remember doing laundry everywhere I've been, pretty much. When I lived on Webster Street, they had laundry in the basement there in the apartments, and people would go down and put their stuff in the wash and then come back 4 hours later. It was so annoying. So I remember that. And I remember, like, when I lived on 4th Avenue, I had to go to the laundromat. I definitely remember that. Those things are in my mind. When I was in college, for some reason, I don't know, instead of having, like, coin-operated machines, they gave these little plastic, rectangular-shaped things you put into the slots instead of coins, and they would get, like, in the box, they would melt. And so sometimes you push them in and they get stuck halfway and they'd melt in the middle so that no one could use that machine until they fixed it. So that was really annoying, and I remember that vividly. And sometimes, I was going home every other week because I was only like an hour and a half away, and there were girls I was dating at home. So, like, I remember, like, taking my laundry home every other week and having my mom do it. That I remember. But seminary, I sat for quite a while trying to remember doing laundry in seminary. Nope, I can't. I know I did laundry, but I cannot remember. Was there machines in the basement of the buildings I lived in? Did I go to the laundromat? Nothing. It's totally, completely, 100% gone. No recollection of doing laundry at seminary. It's weird. So sometimes, the things can just disappear. And I'm assuming that means that laundry at seminary was painless. It was easy. There were no problems because it didn't stick in my brain. There's no emotional component to it at all. Well, sometimes we can forget things. Sometimes we can hold on to things too long. Sometimes our memories can lie to us. As we remember things a certain way, a way they didn't happen, but we seem sure that that's the way it was. But then someone can prove to you later on, look, that's not how it was, and I can prove it. And you're like, I would have sworn, right? Sometimes the past can hold a lot of pain and disappointment. And if we don't make peace, some sort of peace with the past, we can wind up stuck there, unable to appreciate and see the possibilities of the day that we're living in. We can get stuck in the past and become unable to dream and imagine a better future. As we can get just stuck, in the good old days, even if the days weren't that good. I think about the story from the Bible in the Old Testament where the Israelites, the Hebrews, were in slavery in Egypt for over 400 years. They're getting beaten, if they don't work hard enough, and they're forced to work long hours, and it's not a pleasant environment. And finally, the day comes, and someone comes and gives them their freedom. And God goes with them out of Egypt. He parts the Red Sea, and they cross over. They escape their persecutors, their captives, and they're free. And they wander around in the wilderness, and they get a little hungry. And the first thing they do is say, remember how in Egypt we had plenty to eat? That was so much better there. We should have just stayed in Egypt when we were slaves. It's crazy how we can get all turned around and feel like the good old days are a little better than they are. Part of making our peace with the past is learning to see the past clearly and remembering things the way they really are. And overcoming that desire we have to remain in the familiar rather than to do the hard work and make sacrifices carving out a future. As we get older, I do this, probably some of you do too. We look back at the stuff we used to be able to do. Maybe we go play basketball or volleyball or something, and we think we can still jump and spike that ball or, do something. And then we jump and our feet barely leave the floor. It's not the same as it used to be. We may tell ourselves that the best days are behind us, that we're not what we once were, and we're not. But the best days can still be ahead of us. We can still be, however old you are, there's still growth, and there's still possibilities, and there's still God working in our future. The past wages war with our future. But we still may hold more than we imagine. Sometimes the past is all about, the things that we regret the things that we did, maybe regret the things we didn't do. Some people like to say, I have no regrets. I always say, really? You have no regrets? You can't think of one regret? Now, there's not one thing that if you could do it over again, you'd do it different? Come on. If that's true, then it means you haven't learned anything. Right? If you wouldn't do something different, doesn't that mean you didn't learn anything? You just do the same thing over and over again, no matter how bad it went? We need to learn from our regrets. Better yet, learn from someone else's regrets. And, regrets also, if it's just about you, you could see, you got through those things and you grew because of them, and maybe you are a better person because of the things you went through. But were there other people hurt because of the things you messed up and did wrong or didn't do? And would you do something different, not for yourself, but for them? Yeah. I think about, when I think about regrets, there's an older movie called With Honors about these students who were at Harvard, and they meet this homeless guy, Joe Pesci, and he's living in the library basement at Harvard, and no one knows it, but that's where he's living. And this student, this political science student, drops his thesis paper down into the window well, and this guy winds up finding it in the basement, and he's burning it to feed the burner down in the basement at Harvard. And the guy runs down there, finds this paper, and demands it back. And the guy says, well, I'll give you your paper back one page at a time. You do me a favor, and I'll give you a page. And so they start this relationship. And he gets to know this the student gets to know this homeless person. And there's a lot more depth to him than he would have expected. And he finds out that Joe Pesci, this homeless guy, has a little bag of rocks. And each of these rocks is for a regret he has. And he begins to tell him about the stories about how, he kind of left his family, abandoned his children, and went off and did his own thing, and had a kind of a crazy life. But he has this bag of regrets, and one of the regrets is leaving his child, his son. The movie goes on, and eventually Brendan Fraser, the student, is left with a choice. Does he finish his thesis paper on time and turn it in on time and do it the way his professor wants him to so he can graduate with honors? Or, since Joe Pesci is at the end of his life, does he instead turn in his paper late, do something different than his professor wanted, and take this man, this homeless person, to see his son to try and make amends for what he'd done? So he decides to take this homeless man to his son's house to try and make amends, to try and make things right. And at the end of the movie, his son won't forgive him. But at the end of the movie, they're standing around his grave. The homeless man has died, and he's left a paper, a little thing describing each of the 4 students and what they've meant to him. And he gets to Brendan Fraser's character, the guy who didn't turn his thesis in on time, didn't graduate with honors, and he says something like, to so-and-so who will not graduate Harvard with honors, but who will graduate life with honor and with no regret. And I'm sure he would have regrets later on, but not the same kind of regrets that homeless man had. That he did something difficult and honorable so that he wouldn't have those same kind of regrets. Learn from our regrets, and better yet, learn from other people's regrets. Don't look back on things that you did or things that you left undone and wish that you would have done something different, wish that you would have went for it, wish that you would have risked and dared and dreamed a different dream. I think about people in the Bible who had regrets, and the one that sprang to mind was, King David, who definitely had regrets, especially later in life. David grew up a shepherd boy, tending his father's sheep, but it was still an exciting life, right? He's fighting lions and bears with a sling. That's kind of exciting. Not for me, it'd be terrifying for me, but for him it was exciting. And, he's later on, he's still young, fights a giant that the whole army is afraid of, but he goes out against him. After that, David becomes really popular. Saul, the king at the time, is a kind of a failed king, and David winds up running away from Saul because Saul is jealous of David's popularity and David's opportunities where he could have killed Saul, but he doesn't do it because he doesn't want to harm the person that God anointed to be king. So he has that respect for God, respect for the king. And so it's really an exciting life. And later on, when he does become king after Saul dies, David has military victory after military victory, just against incredible odds sometimes. And he's just continues to take steps forward and higher and more difficult things. And eventually, though, I think he just gets bored. You know, there's no challenges left. And he's just bored. And this is where regrets happen. You know, he's bored, and one day he's like, even when that year when the army goes out to wage war, he's like, nah, it's not a challenge. I'm just going to stay here. And he stays home, and he winds up getting up in the middle of the night, wandering around. Sounds like a bored person. From his roof, he sees Bathsheba, this woman bathing, and he's like immediately in love. Winds up having an affair with her, having her husband killed. This all leads to consequences that go on for the rest of his life. All because he just got to a place where he stopped dreaming and stopped taking risks. He's taking the wrong kind of risks. But he stopped like pursuing higher things. And sure, even though he was repentant for what he did, those consequences haunted him for a long time. But even though he had regrets, he knew what to do. In Psalm 51, we kind of hear David's response to realizing that he had done something terrible. Psalm 51, verses 3 and 4, he says, "For I recognize my rebellion. It haunts me day and night. Against you and you alone have I sinned. I have done what is evil in your sight." He confesses to God the things that he did wrong. And then he makes a request. In 10, 11, and 12, he says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a loyal spirit within me. Do not banish me from your presence, and don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation." He has the request for restoration, for renewal, that he knows that God can turn him around, turn his intention around. And then he expresses his remorse in verses 16, 17. He says, "You do not desire a sacrifice, or I'd offer one. You don't want a burnt offering. The sacrifice you desire is a broken spirit. And you will not reject a broken and repentant heart, O God." So he expresses that remorse, and he would make a sacrifice if that's what God wanted, but God wants that broken spirit and that heart that's remorseful. And sometimes when we make a mistake like that, when we do something that we really regret, something that hurts not just yourself but other people, sometimes when we realize what we've done, the hardest person that we have to forgive is ourselves. I know, like, I forgive you just like that. But I'll beat myself up for the things that I've done. And I know a lot of you are probably the same way. You know, in the New Testament, Peter is one of those guys with regrets. Something I think maybe he beat himself up for a while. You know, they hauled Jesus away at the end of his life. They arrest him. They take him to a trial. They're going to crucify him. And while he's at trial, while he's in jail, people are questioning Peter. "Hey, are you one of his followers? You were with him. I saw you with him." And 3 times Peter says, "Nope, I don't know him." And I think about like what Peter must have been feeling, knowing that when Jesus really needed him to stand by him, he was just washing his hands and saying, I don't know him. But then, Jesus is raised from the dead. And he appears to the disciples. And, Jesus makes two appearances with his followers. And he, but hasn't stayed with them. He just kind of is there and then he's gone. And I assume that, he hasn't said, you guys need to be out doing something. He just is showing up. And so they don't know what to do. They are like, oh, Jesus is alive. That's great. But now what? And so Peter, he falls back on the thing that he knows best. He says, let's go fishing. Because I at least know what to do with that. So Peter goes fishing. The disciples, they all go with him. They're on the boat. And I assume that at this time that, he is consumed with guilt. He is wondering, what have I done? He's going to try and make up for it in any way that he can. Sometimes guilt like that keeps you stuck in the past. It keeps you just reliving it over and over again in your mind. So Peter's stuck in the past, and so he does that most familiar thing that he knows to do, just to go fishing. When you're feeling guilty, you may desperately want to make up for the thing that you regret. So, Jesus has seen him 2 different times now and hasn't said anything. So maybe Peter's thinking, maybe Jesus doesn't know. Maybe everything can just go back to the way that it was before. Maybe Peter can just forget about it and pretend that it never happened. So when he sees Jesus on the shore that third time, they're all out in the boat, the disciples, and they see Jesus on the shore, and they've been fishing, and they got nothing. He tells them to put the net on the other side. They get this huge haul of fish, and they recognize Jesus is on the shore. And so rather than wait for the boat to get back to shore, Peter jumps in and swims because he's wanting to let Jesus see. I'm really happy that you're alive. The other stuff happened before. If you know about it, I didn't mean that stuff. And then they get to the shore, and Jesus says, bring some fish, and I'll cook breakfast. And so Peter goes back to the net in the water, and he doesn't grab, 10 fish. He drags the whole net onto shore, 153 fish full of, a net full. He drags the whole thing on shore because he's wanting to show how much he cares about Jesus. He's doing everything he can to maybe prove it to himself, that he didn't mean that thing that he said. And so they're sitting around this charcoal fire, and this is the passage where a lot of people make a big deal about the 2 kinds of love that Jesus asks about. But John uses those words interchangeably. I don't think he cares about what they mean. But there is a really unusual word in this passage. It's the word for charcoal fire. It only occurs one other time in the whole New Testament. It's the place where Peter denies Jesus. He's sitting, warming his hands around a charcoal fire. And so the setting is the same. Peter's sitting at a charcoal fire. 3 times at that first one, he denied knowing who Jesus was. And 3 times around this one, he gets to say that he loves Jesus. And in that passage, when Jesus asks him the 3rd time, he said to him the 3rd time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he said to him the 3rd time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything, and you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Here, that same sort of setting. 3 times he's denied knowing Jesus, and Now 3 times, Jesus asks him, do you love me? And when he asks him that 3rd time, Peter knows that Jesus knows what happened. And Jesus tells him it's all about the love you have for me. And if you love me, it's what you do for other people that matters. Regret like that, something that you did that you just wish you could take back. Regret may be part of your past, but it doesn't need to be part of your future. It's never too late to write a new story. Sometimes the past is not because of what you did. Sometimes it's because of what's been done to you. Maybe there's been abuse or cruelty, damage. Sometimes the damage is done to us by well-meaning people, right? Maybe our parents goofed up. They were doing the best they could, the best that they knew how, but sometimes still, we can be affected by the way we're brought up. Sometimes even things that happen in the church can be damaging and hurtful. I grew up a pastor's kid, and being a pastor's kid is not an easy thing. There are harder things. I had great parents, so some people don't even have that. But sometimes the church can come off kind of negative when you grow up with the pastor's kid. And I've seen pastors' kids really go the wrong way and really have terrible feelings about God and their faith. And sometimes it's because people have unrealistic expectations. The pastor's kid should be perfect. Or you wind up seeing too many things in church, that kind of the ugliness with politics and things that shouldn't go on, but they do sometimes. You see too much and you just kind of get turned off. And for a long time, I was that way, My sister still is maybe a little bit. But I remember going to college, and I started off in computer science and just hated it so much. And I remember trying to decide what to do after that. And I remember praying to God. I'm like, God, just help me. Show me what you want me to do. I'll do anything that you want, except I don't want to be a pastor. Anything else at all. I will go to Africa and be a missionary and live out in with nothing. That's fine, but not a pastor. But as time went by, the next couple of years in college, I had kind of a perspective shift. Some people don't get that, but I had that happen to me. And I realized as I look back with a little distance, that, there were a lot of terrible things that happened in church. Things that shouldn't happen in church. Disappointing things. But, we moved around a lot the first half of my life. The first half of those, growing up years. So there were bad things. But there were also a lot of good things that happened. People were in many ways really good to us. And when we did move, every time we moved, I went to a place where I had instant friends. Or, people's parents made them be my friend. So that was nice. There were good things too. And looking back on it all, I could see the way that God was working, even in times of trial, in times of challenge, to make me a better person. And I got to the point where I just knew that what God was calling me to do was to be a pastor, the one thing I didn't want to do. And by that point, I was good with it. I was okay with it. I could see that a lot of my gifts were in that direction. So So I went to seminary, I studied, I graduated, I became a pastor. My first church was so good to me. They were, my first church, I made more money than my dad ever made in any church. And not a lot more, but a little more. And so I was grateful for the opportunity I had there and grateful for the way I was treated. And then I came here after that. Treated great here too. But I did dumb things, Got myself in trouble. I wound up having to resign, which was the right thing. And I thought when I left the church, I believed at that point that someday I'd be back in ministry again at some point. Well, time went by, and I wound up getting remarried, and it looked more and more like I would not be going back into a role of a pastor again. But then at Crossbridge, I was brought on staff part-time, and it looked like maybe I would be able to have a chance to be a pastor again. But I wound up being really honest about the way I thought about certain things, and it became clear that I was not going to be able to be ordained in that denomination because of some of the things I thought and the ways I thought about certain things. And, it's like many of you know who Andy Stanley is, pastor in Atlanta, or he was a pastor in Atlanta. And his father was Charles Stanley, who was a pretty famous Baptist pastor, really very, very good, gifted speaker. But Charles Stanley was one of those guys who drew lines. And you better be on this side of the line, because you're on that side of the line, you're in trouble. And Andy Stanley, his son, looked at things a little differently. And this is actually why he wound up having to resign his position as pastor at North Point in Atlanta recently. Because Andy Stanley was more about not drawing lines, but about making circles. And he wanted to make the circles as big as he could to include as many people as possible. And so some people recently decided that his circle was a little too big, and they asked him to leave his position down there. But I'm more the kind of guy who wants to draw a big circle to include as many people as possible. And because of that, this wasn't going to work out in the Nazarene church. And so at that point, I thought I wasn't going to be able to move with my family situation here. And if I couldn't go somewhere else, it was impossible that I could ever go back to ministry again. Who knew, right? The things that are possible. Back at the Nazarene church, after I had, told them what I thought about things, I had regret. I thought maybe, or I was pondering if I had regret. Maybe I shouldn't have been so honest. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut, right? And it would have been fine. But in the waiting, God was working. And like the thing that seemed impossible, God made possible. And here we are. A chance to go back to the only place I could go and be pastor. This place. And because this place was forgiving and gave a second chance. We need to work through and let go of all the ways the past keeps us from embracing the future. All the ways the past keeps us from dreaming impossible dreams.
Please stand and sing about our faithful God.
Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye, to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of Asia. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Yea, Lord, we greet thee on this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be all glory given. Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Thank you for coming. Don't forget about Messiah here at 3. Have a blessed week.